Good morning, everyone. Please take your seat quickly. We'd like to do this before the other lecture. All right, so today is organized in this way. We'll have two different parts. First, we'll go through the rules and instructions for assignment 3. Janet will show you how to animate the flipbook. It's rather easy in PowerPoint, but I'll go through the instructions first. Then Blair Gardiner, who is the coordinator of construction design, the subject you will take next year, is going to come and give a guest lecture about site issues. So that's the program for today. So you will probably see in the LMS the assignment guidelines have been updated. So you will find a few more lines under assignment 3 that explain what to do. So the idea is that we still have a 24% weight assignment, so exactly as what you did now. And what we want you to do is to finalize the flipbook section. Now you should have the full set of drawings. You should have submitted that Wednesday, or hopefully soon. And what we want you to do is to produce the final flipbook that we can show as a final product and as an animation with a voiceover, so with a narration. And in detail, we want you to submit by the end of the semester, so on the 21st of October, 1 p.m., which means 2 hours, 15 minutes prior to your tutorial, or 4 hours and 15 minutes, depending on the class you're enrolled in. But short video, 4 or 5 minutes, which means 12 slides, 20 to 30 seconds each. That's the type of narration we want on each slide. We are working on a Dropbox folder in order for you to upload these and make the final submission. A high-resolution PDF, so we also want to see the slides separately. I made a rough calculation. One cover slide, 12 slides for the sections, because now we focus on the sections. And we also tell you how to insert some planned portions in the section to make it more clear when you want to explain something specific related to horizontal elements. 2 extra slides that collate, in the first one, the construction details, in the second one, photographs, annotations, captions, and other stuff. And the narration script. So we want you to work hard on that. So it's not just that you say whatever comes in your mind over the slides. So we want you to write down that script, discuss it with your tutor, and also you submit it separately so that it can be corrected. So this is the submission. How to do it? So you will have 3 tutorials. Tutorial 8, 9, and 10 you will use to develop details, discuss the photographs, sketches, and other inserts you want to put in your flipbook section. Tutorial 10, the third one, will be used to discuss the narration script. And then in tutorial 11, you will present. But what we like you to do, you take these 12 plans plus 12 sections, and you forget about the plans for a moment, and you take just the sections. So you discuss straight away with your tutor how to integrate that with details. You probably all know what a detail is, so 1 to 5, 1 to 10, 1 to 20, whatever, depending on the detail. Generally, the corners or the connections between vertical and horizontal elements are of interest. So these are the type of details we'd like to see. In other cases, you want to integrate the flipbook section with a, I don't know, 3-dimensional sketch or something like that, but that's the kind of thing we'd like to see. So details. Images. Images can be photographs, can be taken from external website, maybe manufacturer websites, data sheets, whatever. So images or external photographs. Captions. Captions can just describe photographs, but they can also provide other performance criteria. So maybe you'd like to explain what insulation or what a specific wall does. So you talk about thermal and structural things. So this could be a caption. Planned portions. In some cases, imagine when you're pouring the slab on ground, or maybe the first floor horizontal frame. In these cases, you might need to add a plan view or a portion of a plan to explain what you're talking about, to show the mesh, batches, to show the joists. So in those cases, you will need to take the 12 plans you're done, select the right one, take a portion, and make an insert into the section. So that's what happened. You do that during tutorial 8, and you review it during tutorial 9. And in tutorial 10, you will review the narration script. So that's the type of details we're talking about. That's the first page. Let's say it's, again, an A3 format. So you have a few details. You collect them together. So it would be great if you can go to the tutorial already with some details to talk about and review them with your tutors. Otherwise, you just talk to your tutor and pick the right ones for you. And this is what I'd like to happen immediately, tutorial 8. At the same time, this is just a sample, so you just see photographs. But I'd like you to implement in this page also external images or other things, or a bit longer captions that explain this type of photographs and further information you want to insert in the flipbook. So these two pages, details and photographs, have to be discussed during tutorial 8 and 9. So we'll give you the opportunity to go to tutorial 8 and discuss how to do that. Otherwise, you already bring this type of material and you discuss it with your tutor. Tutorial 9 is to review the final product. All right? 1 and 2. So these are 2 extra pages you have to work on separately. So forget about the 12 plus 12 plans. Now we arrive to tutorial 10. So it's 1 week prior to submission. And this means that your flipbook section should already look like that. So now is the time that you integrate details, photographs, captions in the drawings. And we're talking just about the sectional drawings. So here there are 12 sections, and you take these 12 slides and you integrate it with that. The plans are going, when necessary, into the section. So beside, all right? So there are no 24 slides in total, but 12, plus 1 cover, and plus the 2 extra slides for details and photographs and other information. Is that clear so far? Yes. Good. What is missing? It's missing the narration script. So at that stage, you should be able to flip through your drawings and write down a few notes. You have already done several presentations in Design Studios. You probably write some notes for you. So that's what we want you to do. You prepare some notes in order for you to be able to speak on each drawing for about 20 to 30 seconds. So this means that we don't want you to read what's already written in the drawing. Like, this is a photograph of the slab. The slab is this is not what we want, so you don't have to do what I'm doing now, that I'm reading the slides. You have to do it differently. So you have to explain in another way what is not present in the drawings. So we all know that there is a slab on ground, there is a vertical frame. That's part of the drawings. We want you to explain how that happens, what is not present in the drawings. Right? So if you read your script and you see that what you are talking about can be understood through the drawings, then it means that it's not a good script. But your tutors have the possibility to review that with you during tutorial 10. We think that, we guess that 2 to 3 pages of that should be enough to go through the 12 slides, probably even 1 page. It depends on the type of font you use. But that's up to you. So it doesn't have to be in any particular format, just readable, understandable. You divide it in slides. And after that, there are several programs, softwares that you could use to animate things and make videos. But we think that the best for you is to convert all your drawings into JPEGs. And now Jeanette is going to tell you how to do that. And import them into PowerPoint. And then just use this very simple command that is under the slideshow tab. And then it's record slideshow. In this way, you flip through the slides, you record your voice, assuming that your laptop has got a microphone. So I assume that all of you has the possibility to access a laptop or a computer with a microphone and speakers, and you just record your video. At the end, you save it, and that's a final product. So that's what we want to see, the simplest way to probably create a video without any video editing skills. But having said that, we are happy for you to use other software, if you like, if you're expert to. Again, remember that this is not a matter of impressing in video editing. This is a matter of being clear. So it's just a different way to animate your drawings, and let's say it's like recording my lecture, all right? So it's, let's say you present this to your tutor. It's like recording that, but in a clear and nice way that it can be presented to maybe at the end to an exhibition or in some kind of events. Again, as usual, we also have the sections when to do it and why to do it. Why to do it is rather clear. It's because we want you to finalize your product, and I really invite you to read through the learning outcomes of the subjects and see at this stage if what we've done was actually aligned to these objectives. So if what you've done so far has actually allowed you to go through the understanding of logics of construction or relate building, manufacturing, assembly principle to small to medium scale constructions and this type of outcomes. So it's really important for you that you tell us as a feedback if this final assignment is appropriate to reach these type of outcomes. Tutorial 11 will be dedicated to presentations. Well, in that case, you can probably the wisest way to do this is to just play your recordings, assuming that they are 5 minutes each. It should be pretty easy to keep the schedule. And again, from tutorial 9 to tutorial 11, from tutorial 8, sorry, so week 9 to tutorial 10, week 11, really go through the steps week by week. Otherwise, you will be late and you won't have the time to review this type of things with your tutor. In the past years, our experience is that once the set of drawings is done, details, annotations are a kind of less important complement, and the students don't give enough importance to that. But you'll see with the example that Jeanette is going to show you that complementing your flipbook section can actually increase the quality of the drawings and of the overall understanding of the product. So this is a very important phase. That's why there is a weight of 24%, and also we want you to consider it as a completely different assignment than what you've done so far. If this is clear, I give the computer to Jeanette so she can explain you just a few simple instructions on how to do that. Any questions so far? Speak now or shut up forever. Okay. No, you are allowed to write small, short emails to ask questions.
Okay, so I'm going to go through with you guys how to put up a quick animation using PowerPoint. You can, obviously Alberto has mentioned that we can use other programs as well, so things like Adobe After Effects that comes with the Creative Cloud, at Adobe Premiere Pro. We do actually recommend you have a look at it, because right now while you're at university you have access to the Lynda tutorials, and also look at websites like Video Copilot, and it'll probably help you a lot later on in your career, because I'm seeing a lot more animations come out during the master's courses as well, so you should always use it as an opportunity to learn new skills. That being said, if you only have access to PowerPoint, it's a pretty good thing to do your work as well. You can also use things like Movie Maker if you're on a Mac, and just have fun with it. The whole point of it is to show what you've learnt from drawing these, and not just I've drawn a really nice section. So you want to show the understanding that you have in what you have drawn. So I'm just going to quickly show you so this is a couple of pictures that I've just kind of pulled out sections of. Like, so this is the original one that was submitted for assignment 2. And what we've done is we've kind of just split it up a little bit so that you can actually animate and talk about certain things. What you really want to be careful with is not repeating what's already on the slide, because as you probably realize with subtitles, people can read a lot faster than you can speak. So what you want to do is anything here, you don't read out. So that just keeps it more engaging. And it's also the same thing when you're doing a design presentation. You really want to avoid doing the whole karaoke text thing, because that just makes it quite boring for the person watching it. Okay, so after I've done this, I've kind of just split everything up into a couple of pictures. On Photoshop or whatever program you're using, we can now insert it easily into PowerPoint. Unfortunately, PowerPoint only does this for the Windows version of it. It doesn't do it on Mac. I'm not quite sure why. They just never added that capability. So what you can do is once you open up a new PowerPoint, you just go to Insert, Photo Album, New Photo Album, and from this section, you can just go to Flipbook. I'm going to select everything in my folder, which was named really evenly, just like this. Then you can check the order of all your slides. Press Create. And wait. Okay. And what you see now is actually lined up every single slide for you, ready for you to speak about and animate. So I'm going to go on to, like a cooking show, I'm going to go to the one I prepared earlier, which is not this one. Where is it? It actually says photo album at the front. I would really recommend not doing that. It's just, oh, there's too many. All right, wonderful. Okay, so after going to that start narration thing, you'll come up with the presenter view of PowerPoint. And what you can do then is really simply, you can activate this cursor to see if you want to show the cursor when you're pointing at things during your animation, and just go through and speak about every single slide. So first off, always remember to have your front cover page with your name on it, please, and your student number. And then, like, this is the example from before. This is the finished result. This is what you're looking at. And, of course, put a plan there to actually show where you're cutting through the section. Right, so locate where you are and what you're talking about, and some photographs. So as with your flipbook section, we're going to go through every single segment and talk about like the important stages of each part, and also what you thought was really helpful in achieving the design intent of the building. Like, for example, here, this student talks about how the excavation worked, and how he found the demolition of the swimming pool really, really interesting. So he spoke about this as well. And you might pick out some details. Right. At this point, you might want to integrate a plan drawing of the section as well to further explain why each part is really important, how this might have actually helped. Why is there a slab on the ground at that point? And why did they pick a slab compared to a different footing system? So it might be something you want to cover to actually show your understanding of the building. At this point, the students also pulled out a little 1 to 10 detail. So you integrate this as well. And then at this point, you would talk about the detail, why the reinforcement would be here maybe, and how it would, and how this has actually helped with the design intent. So why is it a strip footing here instead of a pad footing, etc. He's also integrated some photographs and some site photos as well to illustrate it. It just makes it more interesting and less boring as you're going through it. So this is the same for every single part. He's talked about how these junctions work and how this might help with the overall design intent of the architect. Sometimes I've pulled some, when I've prepared this, I've pulled a couple of details from pictures that aren't meant to be here, so don't get too confused. Right. Just an example. So you might actually put a little bit of the framing elements here, and also like the plan version, so you can explain it as well. So don't think you're only limited to this side. So this side I would keep pretty consistent, so it is like a flip book and it slowly animates, but have fun with everything around it so you can add more information as you go through. Yeah. So wall framing?
As Jeanette said, not all these drawings belong to the Tube House, because we know it's one of your case studies. So if you find that the drawings are not matching with what you're doing, that's completely fine. We don't have plan views to insert exactly where we want. So we have taken images here and there to make this sample. But this sample is not entirely correct in terms of the construction.
Yes. So don't copy it. Just get the overall spirit of it, right? And then here, so the students also included a framing detail as well. So these are all little things. So do you remember that detail page that Alberto showed at the beginning? You want to integrate each of those into it, so you haven't just drawn a detail for the sake of drawing the detail. Like, how come that detail is important to your section, and how is it important to the overall design of the building? And how has construction helped your understanding of the construction helped you understand the design of the building? So all of this you want to explain as you go through. So you might pick out little junction details of how these things are achieved in terms of span, or how these details are achieved so that they can get nice clean finishes. So with the tube house, you can look at it and they're like, well, they really wanted really straight lines, thin walls and everything. So how this was achieved and how you pulled them out in the details. And you go through all the site pictures and you might pick up some elements that might help you explain it. You would also look at some of the construction systems, like products they might have used, like the cladding systems, and you can pull these from the manufacturer's website and include these on the site as well, because you might find that would help your explanation. So just going to keep going through, click, click. And as you can see, every single part's is a little bit detailed. You might include some axonometric sketches or isonometric sketches to explain if you can't show it in plan or section. And just keep going through. You might add some people if you like, but don't put such big people in that it covers your drawing. That's happened before. Right. Some plan details as well for this section. And you can notice that it always ends up with the 12 slides in the end. It's just pulling out different elements so you're not bombarded with all the information all at once. So I severely recommend you don't just put this one slide like it is here and then just read off it like this. Slowly reveal the information so that your viewer can concentrate on one thing at a time. Yeah, so then you might finish with the joinery units and how they've actually cut it out from the roof. And then the final touching pieces and how they've fitted it out. So that's pretty easy, right? So if you don't know where it is again, you can just go to slideshow, record slideshow, start recording from the beginning, start recording. Then it's pretty simple. You can pause it when you realize you've just mumbled up all your words, and you can, rehearse it a couple of times as well. So it's pretty easy. Paused. Yeah.
All right, so as you see, the matter of recording is not so difficult. So there is a very simple way to do that. It's also just a matter of taking all your drawings, import them into JPEG images. There might be one thing. If you look at these drawings, you see this is definitely, it probably used to be a portrait drawing on an A3 sheet that you just convert to landscape so that you can add further images and details on the right or on the left. I mean, it's up to you. For landscape drawings, it should already be a natural thing to place it on these slides. Whatever format, whatever orientation you have used so far, you will have to convert it to a landscape orientation, because just that's the way it works in PowerPoint. So use this example to see also how to convert a portrait type of drawing. You just reduce the scale. So these drawings are, of course, at the 1:50 scale, but on the slides, it doesn't really matter what's the size of the drawing. Is that all right? So the resolution is 1:50, but of course it doesn't make sense to speak about scale on the projector. Is that clear? Because that's generally the type of tricky things that don't know exactly how to work.
Yeah, the other thing is that if you guys don't have a microphone on your laptop, just use the one on your phone, and then you can just drop the audio in afterwards as well, so if you want to make it clearer. And one other thing I noticed a lot of trouble people submitting with Turnitin, we're not using Turnitin this time, so you have to zip everything into one folder, but because the video will be significantly larger than PDFs, I do recommend you start submitting earlier than 2 minutes before 1 p.m. to avoid a late submission, because what we will record is when it finished uploading, not when it started uploading.
So you should be able to submit the slides and narration script in Turnitin without any issues. It should be a slender file. For the video files, we'll let you know as soon as possible. We're already working on a Dropbox folder. You will know probably within a week or so, but nothing special to be worried about. And also the size of these videos are not, so large as if you edit that using another software. All right? We think this is the simplest way to do that, just without any extra skills. Again, I'd like to collect questions and doubts straight away, or maybe have a bit of discussions about that before we have a 5-minute break and wait for Blair to give his lecture. It's all clear? All right, very good. So I'll give you 5 minutes, or 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, and Blair will come and give you a guest lecture about site issues.
Comments?
No.
No comments.
Guys, please, let's welcome Blair Gardiner, Coordinator of Construction Design, all together. This is an occasion for you to know what you're going to expect next semester. So if you're going to pass the subject, but probably you will, because it's rather easy.
Can you hear me if I walk around? You can, because you're right at the front. Get this. Okay. Oh, that's a bit loud. Okay. First of all, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for welcoming me in. Thank you. If you can indulge me a little bit in that, before I start, it's sort of useful sometimes to know a little bit about the person who talks to you, okay? Because it often influences the way that material is presented to you. And I think some of the things that I've been fortunate or unfortunate to be involved with have sort of flavoured the way that I talk about particularly this topic area. My background is that I did most of my schooling part-time, and I was going to study law, but I deferred, and I think I went for like half a semester and thought I just needed a break because I'd studied. It took me a long time just to get there. And I deferred doing law, and instead I went and did because I thought I'd have a break before I went back to law, but I found myself doing a carpentry and joinery apprenticeship instead. So I worked as an apprentice carpenter and joiner, and eventually became a building estimator, contracts administrator, and sort of project manager. Now, during that period of time, there used to be these people who'd come out on site, and they'd usually drive, at that particular period of time, they'd drive black Audis. Sorry, black Saabs. Today it's black Audis, but in those days it was a black Saab. And they'd usually have their hands in their pockets. They'd usually be wearing black of some shade. And the other hand that wasn't in the pocket would be sort of waving around. And they would pretend that, in fact, they were responsible for this building that we were doing. When in fact I knew the truth was that, in fact, I was the responsible one for this building because I was building it, and God knows what they were doing. I have no idea what they were doing. Now, these people call themselves architects. So we used to enjoy having architects on site because we'd take them through the muddiest part of the site, just love that bit of colour on that black uniform they'd wear, always looked good. And I thought, geez, I could do that. That seems pretty good, pretty easy thing to do. So again, I took a little bit of a break, and I went and studied in Italy. And I studied art restoration and industrial design in Florence and Milan and in Venice. And then I came back here and I thought, I remember those guys, maybe I'll go and do architecture. So I did architecture at RMIT, part-time, and I worked full-time. Still, I went back to the building company I used to work with. And eventually, I had to make the decision that I wanted to be a construction person or did I want to be an architect. And I thought, I've done construction, let's do architecture for a while. And I went and joined a architectural practice. And I think I dropped in salary by about 5,000%. And it took me maybe 8 years to get even close to the money that I used to earn. So think about what you're doing here. Okay, that's all I have to say. And I eventually became an associate director of the firm. Now, when I was working in that practice, probably because of my construction background, I tended to get involved in projects that were going off the rails a little bit. You know, something was going wrong with them. And the thing that struck me the most about these things that were going wrong is that invariably when you get involved in things that go wrong, you think, geez, this really could have been avoided. Could have been so easily avoided. So with that sort of, knowing that little bit of background of my path here, have a think about the things that I'm going to talk to you about. And unfortunately, I'm not up to the calibre of your good professor. So it's pretty basic. Okay, so excuse me for that. So my view is that if you sort of know about stuff, then you're going to be a really valuable asset to a company. Because if you can avoid things that might go wrong, then that is a real skill. It's a real true skill. And one of the first points in which you start to develop that skill is through a thing called a site analysis. So that's what I'd like to talk to you about today. So we're going to very briefly talk about what is a site analysis. I'm going to not cover the whole gambit of things, but I'm going to cover a couple of the selected features of what a site analysis involves. And I'd like to give you some fairly basic sort of examples of what I mean by this thing about avoidance. Now, there's a very good publication, which I think is really useful for you guys. I mean, I use it, and I have used it a lot, is this HB50, which is a glossary of building terms. So if you're not sure what a word means in the construction industry, you'll find it in HB50, this glossary of building terms. It's a dictionary of all the words that are used in the Australian standards related to construction. So it's a very Australian-specific dictionary, and it contains a quite sort of convoluted definition of site analysis, which I think is very limited as well. So I'd like to go back again, strip it down to its basics, and let's just think about what a site is. Well, it's an area of land or water where construction work or other development is proposed or going to be undertaken, regardless whether the land is a small component or a larger component, okay, of the development. What does analysis mean? Well, let's just go to the dictionary to look at that. A detailed study or examination of something in order to understand more about it. That's really, really important. Okay, so put the two things together, and I reckon this is a fairly accurate description of what a site analysis is. It's a detailed study or examination of an area proposed for or influenced by construction development, taking that first bit, in order to understand more about it and generate a response to the outcomes of such study and investigation. So you go and try to understand as much as you can about something, and that helps you to develop a response to that something. Okay? So that's my sort of homespun definition. It's not an official one. Now, why should you undertake a site analysis? Well, a site analysis should always be prepared in advance of design, and certainly in advance of construction. Okay? So, wearing my sort of contractor's hat, before I started to price a job, I would go out and visit the site. Before I would start to design a project, I would go and visit the site. And it's not something you can do by looking at Google Maps. That won't tell you a great deal about the reality of the site. So it's not something you can do remotely. It's a very difficult thing to do remotely. You got to go there. And its purpose is to you record, you evaluate the property itself, the surroundings. You're really looking at anything that you have to take into account when you're designing a building and when you're going to build that building. So it's absolutely critical, I think. It's absolutely critical. We don't have a pointer. Now, I'd like to leave this sort of image with you. We'll come back to it, but have a think about this. That image there. And you might be familiar with the term site analysis from a design site analysis. And the things I'm talking to you about is not a design site analysis, it's a construction design analysis. So these are the things that I would put in the category of being a design site analysis. Okay? You look at planning policy, you look at the land use considerations, you look at the heritage aspects of the site. Are there heritage controls? Is there something worth keeping? Is there something worth valuing? What's the density of the area? Because that will impact on an argument for making a compatible contextual design response because of the density of a region, okay? Or even increasing the density potentially. You're looking at the urban context, you're looking at the streetscape, what's the material finishes, what's the facades look like, what are the heights, what's the address of the street building interfaces, Are there active edges to the building? So they're all design things. You're looking at environmental overlays. What sort of amenity do you have to take into consideration? Am I going to overshadow a neighbour? Do I have access to light? Is my building going to be orientated to the north to get maximum solar benefit? So you're looking at these energy efficiencies. You're looking at the framework of the potential building overlay that you can build within. So every site will have certain restrictions on heights. You're looking at the car parking, space, facilities. Where are you going to put your mailbox? Where's the rubbish going to be collected? Okay. Now this is not a construction design analysis. Okay, this is what you would probably do in your design subject. Now, I think this spookily looks like one of your tutors. I think it spookily looks like one of the tutors. You can't see, dude. You can't see that. Now, everyone knows this building? Yeah? What is it? Tell me.
Pisa.
It's Pisa. But what's that? What's that? And what's the common name of it? It's a leaning tower. Okay, so we've lost the tower. It's a leaning tower. So this is the bell tower that's adjacent to the church. And potentially, the contractors and the designers of this building, maybe they didn't do a really good site analysis. You know, I have to be careful here. I have to be careful. Okay. And later on, next year, we'll look at this thing in a bit more detail. Okay? Now, why would you undertake the type of site analysis I'm trying to direct you towards? Okay? Well, the client needs information about potential development feasibility factors. Okay? So, in putting together a cost for this total development, what sort of things do I need to take into account? Okay. The factors of the site will also help you to locate the building. Julian, would you mind just... Okay. There's opportunity factors, then certain advantages and disadvantages of the site. There are environmental benefits, but I'm asking you to think about those things which are not about design issues. It also is really, really important to help identify potential problems, potential issues that you need to factor into your design response. The structure of the building needs to respond to the site. So if there's particular site conditions, and if you don't design your structure to suit those site conditions, then your building is going to fail or it's not going to last as long, or you're going to have maintenance issues with it. You got to service the site. You got to get water and gas and electricity. So where are all those services? Are they available to the site? Okay. Do I have to upgrade them? Do I have to bring them to the site? It's all a cost. And there's constructability factors. If it's really hard to build this building, then the cost of the building is going to be higher. So that might influence your methodology of construction to try to make the building cheaper and faster and just easier to build. Safety factors need to be considered. I'll show you an example of that. And your building is going to influence the neighbours during the construction period, and depending on the area of the site, you might have a very direct influence on the neighbour. And while you're building, you need to consider the neighbour and their amenity and their access issues. Now, we'll come back to this. Now, why site issues become important for us as architects is they usually fall under this thing called latent conditions. Okay? And this is an extract from one of the, in fact, it's a commercial contract. I think you're doing more lower scale work, aren't you? Residential mostly? Okay. Well, in the residential sector, latent conditions, which are the physical conditions of the site or its surroundings, including artificial things, but excluding weather conditions, which differ materially from the physical conditions which one would have reasonably have expected. So there's an expectation by the courts that you, as professional architects, would know about site conditions. The courts would say, well, you're an architect, you must know about stuff. So you should reasonably expect to find stuff, and you should reasonably expect that certain conditions apply. And latent conditions will cover those things that are unexpected, that you would not reasonably expect to find. So when you're excavating a domestic building site, you might not expect to find a Ferrari buried under the ground. Okay? If you're excavating a commercial building site, you might not expect to find the remnants of a ship below the ground. Okay, that's sort of a bit out there, isn't it? You wouldn't sort of expect that. You know, my God, a Ferrari. We could restore it.
You paid for it?
Hmm?
You paid for it?
Would I pay for it?
Yeah.
Look at me. Come on. What do you reckon? Okay? Okay, so you wouldn't expect to find a Ferrari under the ground. You wouldn't expect to find a great big ship under the ground. Okay? Now, I did quite a large residential development in Brunswick a number of years ago. It was an almost entire block of the Brunswick area, and it was an old factory. And we poured the concrete slab, and I went out there on Monday morning because it happened to be close by to where I lived at that time, and I used to always call in at the site before I came into work. And I noticed on the site, in the middle of the site, when a site is quite large, you can't pour all the concrete slab in one go. So you put joins in them, and they're called construction joins. Okay, so that's where you stop the concrete because it's just too big to pour in one go, and you start it again, you know, next week or a few days later. And between these construction joints was this black, yucky, icky, gooey, messy, smelly, sticky stuff oozing out of the joints. Okay? Like it was pretty putrid. What do you think that was? It's yucky stuff coming out of the concrete that had just been poured, out of the joint of the concrete that's been poured. Any guess? Sewage? Well, probably was a bit more pungent than sewage. In fact, it was pretty, like it burned your nostrils. Okay?
Industrial material?
Now, where were you at that time? Because I had no idea what it was. I needed you to help me. Below, when we dug that area up, because we couldn't leave it like that, we had to find out what it was. What we discovered was a 6 metre by 6 metre concrete bunker 2 metres below the ground. And the walls of that concrete bunker was about maybe that thick, heavily reinforced, and it was absolutely full with some sort of chemical material. And what had happened is when they were doing the concrete works and the levelling, the top of that bunker had cracked. And all those chemicals were now coming up to the surface. What we discovered is that that bunker was an old ammunition storage room during World War II, where they stored all the munitions in that room, so if those munitions blew up, it would be contained within that bunker and it wouldn't blow up Brunswick. And what someone had done is they discovered that that bunker exists many, many, many years ago, and had run a pipe to it from their property next door, which happened to be a film processing laboratory. And because it was easier to pour all of that chemical material into this bunker rather than having a filter and the cost of removing all of that, all of this stuff had been going into this 6 by 6 metre volume for a number of years. Now, of course, that processing laboratory had closed down years ago, so we didn't know that that existed. So that would be a latent condition. You wouldn't expect to find that. Okay? Now, contracting parties want to transfer risk. Okay? So they want to minimise their cost as much as possible, because that is a consequence in cost and has a consequence in time. Now, in domestic contracts, the type of contracts that you guys would be applicable to the type of work that you're looking at, where they're not amended, the courts will generally say that latent conditions lies with the responsibility of the builder. Okay? And that sort of makes sense because, you know, a domestic client is uninformed. They're probably only going to do one house, maybe two in their lifetime. So they're not experienced in this area. So the courts tend to just say, well, that's the contractor's area of responsibility. Where there's a contract directly between a client and a builder and there's no intermediary. So if I'm a builder building for a Julian and we're just doing, I'm saying, I'll build you a house, I'll design the house, I'll build you the house, then the courts generally say, well, I should be responsible for these sorts of things. Okay? Responsible in the sense that I should reasonably make investigations to find things out. Okay? Now, in commercial contracts and where architects are involved, the risk shifts. And the risk shifts over to the client. So the client is responsible for the provision of site information. Now, what clients tend to do is they say, oh, but I don't know anything about building. You must know lots about building because you're an architect. So why didn't you tell me to do something? Why didn't you tell me to get that report? Why didn't you tell me that I needed to provide this? Why didn't you tell me that I had to go and find this information out? Because you're the architect. So you must know all this stuff. I'm just a poor commercial developer. I don't know anything. So clients will try to transfer that risk back to you, even though that's contractually it's their responsibility, but they'll try to transfer that onto you. So it's a very, very large area of dispute. It's a huge area of dispute. Okay, so the more savvy you can get about this sort of stuff, the better it is. Now this thing here, what do you think this thing on the bottom is? Is that a latent condition? Something you wouldn't reasonably expect to find? What do you think that this image here is? Probably hard to see with the lights on, but there's a fair bit of discolouring around the edge of where that water is, and it's very brown. The ground is very brown. Any idea what that is? That's soil that has a lot of acidic content to it. So it's acid soil. And if you build in that, it'll eat away at your concrete, it'll eat away at your steel. It'll just chew straight through it. Is that a latent condition? Is that something you wouldn't expect to find? Why would the courts probably argue, well, that's not something you would not expect to find? Why? Because you can see it. You've taken a photo of it, you must have seen it. It's clear, it's obvious that it's there. Okay? So that would not be considered to be a latent condition. Now, how do you undertake a site analysis? Okay? Well, first of all, you go and visit the site. That's really, really important. You've got to go and look at the site. What time do we finish?
We have 40 minutes.
40 minutes. I've only got to slide 2. Okay? You try to do, after you've gone to the site, you get a feel for what it is, you've looked around it, you try to do everything that you can remotely. You do desktop research. Okay? So you try to find out any legal property information. Is there any infrastructure information? What about where are all the services? Can I just, sit on the computer and try to find that information out? What was there before? Prior use information. Okay. What do the approval authorities want? Or what can their approval authorities provide? And what do those utilities, gas, electricity, sewer, stormwater, what sort of information can they provide me? Okay. Then when you go up to the site, you do this sort of visual, you do a more detailed visual examination of the site. Okay. And in that you also include the surroundings, and you formalise that by getting a survey done of the site. Okay. And then you need to know what's below the ground. Okay, so is the ground contaminated? Because you might have found out some previous use. It was a photographic laboratory. Well, maybe there's contamination here. So you'd engage in an environmental audit, then you need to know about the ground conditions itself, and you need to know about the perimeter condition of the site as well. Okay, but everything that's related below the ground. So let's look at some examples of that in this desktop analysis. Now, locally we have quite a good service that will more or less tell you where most of the main services that are adjacent to a site are located. And they brought that under the umbrella of one sort of referencing authority, which they call dial before you dig. Okay? And it was really directed towards the contracting industry, to avoid this sort of stuff. So here's an excavator digging some concrete piles, and of course all the communication lines have wrapped up there. Now clearly they didn't ring dial before you dig. Now if you do ring dial before you dig, and it's a free service, they'll send you out every piece of information they have related to water supply, gas supply, electricity supply, telecommunication supply, electricity supply, but they'll only tell you where the main service is. Okay? Because the assumption is that we don't know what you're going to do, so we'll tell you where the closest pipe is, and you need to connect to that. Okay? A really important piece of information is also the legal definition of the site, and that's controlled by a thing called the certificate of title. Did you write that one? Did you do that certificate of title? You do it, go. No?
They'll write it down.
Okay, good. Okay. Yeah. Now, often when you go to a vacant block of land, let's say we're in an inner suburban area like Carlton, you get a phone call from your client and say, fabulous block of land, corner of Elgin Street and Lygon Street. Beautiful piece of land, is completely vacant, I can't believe it. I can get 60 units on it. I can get 60 units on it. What do you reckon? Can we get 60 or can we get 80? Now, in a suburban location, what generally do you find on corner blocks? What historically was a really good place to put a particular type of service on a corner block? A pub. I like the way you think. That's going back further historically. A corner block has two entry points. So 2 entry points. What is a good thing to put on a site with 2 entry points? A petrol station. So if you have a vacant block of land on a prime corner site, it's a really important thing to find out, because what was below the ground in petrol stations? The petrol tanks, okay? Which means that those sites are almost always invariably contaminated, which means if the site is contaminated, you will have to remove all of the soil and get it treated and removed from the site completely. Okay, so that's a significant cost. And you need to know about things like flood levels. I'll show you what I mean by that. I'll go straight here. This is a sort of more useful example of this thing. It's changed a little bit now because it's all got digitised, but I'll show you this formal document which is called a certificate of title. Now, for an architect, a certificate of title is a really important thing to have because it defines the site in legal terms. Okay? And for an architect, one of the important things for a certificate of title is it tells you how big it is. So that it is the thing that absolutely defines the site boundaries and the size of the site. It's the only thing that legally defines it. And it usually has information such as under the title system, you don't identify the site by its street address because street numbers can change, even street names can change. So you define a property identification through a thing called a volume and a folio number. See that top thing there? So every property will have a unique volume and folio number. Then it'll list who owns the property. Now, the first listing there is the person who first owned the property when it got subdivided, when it first came into being as a property. But on the back of this document, you'll find listed all the owners since that time when this property came into being. Now, why for an architect that's very useful is you'll know who you're dealing with in terms of who your client is if you ask them for a certificate of title. Now, you as an architect have to have it. You really do need it, okay, because it defines that building area. Now, if a client can't provide you with the certificate of title, what does that probably mean? What do you think that means? They can't provide you with the certificate of title. Everyone's doing a really good job of not looking at me in the eye. What do you think that means? They can't give you this legal title.
No idea. Oh, they don't own the property.
They don't own the property. Amazing. Okay? So you're dealing with a client who actually doesn't have legal control of the property. Now, if you have any hope of getting paid, you really want to make sure that the person you're dealing at has some legal control over the property. So it's a very good trigger to determine the client you're dealing with is a legitimate and has legal control of the property. Now, this happens a lot in larger developments where you might get one area of a consortium or a business wanting to look at feasibilities of doing something, but they're not actually the ones who have the legal capacity to activate that project. Okay, so you need to know who the real owner is. So we define the property by its dimensions, its length, and also by its direction from north. So I'll show you what I mean by that in a minute. The title will also give you any conditions that apply to the site, and these are called encumbrances. And it'll list all these conditions that might apply to the site. So in this case, there's an encumbrance for access. There might be encumbrance for, a common encumbrance on domestic properties is the main water line might run at the back of your property, or the main sewer line might run at the back of your property. And that sewage authority or water authority needs access to that. So they'll have rights over that. And usually you can't build over that because they might need to get to it to maintain it. So those authorities will put these things on the title saying encumbrances, you can't do there, we have some control over that, we have some interest in that. There's also things called caveats. So you and I might enter into some sort of contract, and you're a little bit suspicious of me. Why? Why are you suspicious of me? We hardly know each other. That's why you're suspicious of me, because we hardly know each other. Okay? So you might say, look, okay, I'll loan you the $2 million that you want for this development, but I want access to the title. So when something happens to you, there'll be a caveat on the title which will say that before that property is sold, the caveat is activated, and we have to pay you out before that property is part of the sale. So you have some interest, you have some direct interest through this caveat on the title. There are also things called covenants. Now my house has a covenant on it, and it tells me that I'm not allowed to do any mining works on my property, which is a suburban block of land, which ain't very big, but I'm not allowed to mine on it. What's below the ground? Could be gold. Gold. Now, I think the reason why that covenant applies is because that area used to be a bluestone quarry, and I think when they converted it to a residential development, they didn't want people buying up property and then going back and doing mining and doing quarrying operations on it. There were also highly restrictive covenants that might apply in the suburbs. If anyone knows Ivanhoe, which is a suburb about, 6-8 kilometres away, there's huge blocks of land out there, huge blocks of land, and they're great for a developer to put countless numbers of units on them. And often an uninformed person will think, great block of land, I can subdivide it into smaller blocks. However, when that estate was developed, a covenant was put on that area that said you can only build one house on this property. Now, that is in perpetuity. and it's really retained the character of that area. That's why that area of Ivanhoe has very, very large blocks of land, and they all only have one house on them, because the covenant that applies to the title is applicable. We need to know about the top of this site, the land itself, and we do that through a thing called a land survey. And a land survey will do quite a critical thing for us. What it will do is it will go back to the title, it'll get the dimensions that are on the title, and it'll plot those dimensions in real space as to what the dimensions are on the land itself. And the land survey will give you a plan which will show the relationship between the actual conditions of the site, the boundary conditions, and the legal definition of the title. And they may vary. I'll show you what I mean by that. Now that's called a re-establishment survey. Even flat pieces of land have got a slope on them. It's very hard to pick with your eye. So in order to determine what the heights of the ground are, because we need to establish where our driveways are going to be, where our floor heights are going to be, we need to know what is the ground level. Okay? So we need to know site heights. So we need reference levels. And if there's any existing structures, well, we need to plot those really accurately as to exactly where they are, because we might incorporate those into our design, okay? Or we might knock them down. If there's trees, well, we might retain them. We might design our building around them. And we need to know the relationship of the adjacent structures to our site. Now, hopefully you'll start to notice the language of construction, and you'll see that eking out occasionally when you see things like this. This is right outside, what's a very tall building opposite the MSD building? Redmond Barry or Raymond Priestley. Anyway, this thing here is a reference level to an Australian referencing height system, which is called the Australian Height Datum System. So if you see one of these, this is a reference level back to an official level as to what sea level is in Victoria, which is an average tidal change height, which is averaged out, and that's given as a reference, and then all official heights are given to this AHD back to that reference point. So it's X metres above sea level. And you usually find that with these sort of markers. When you see something like that, and a survey mark, they're pretty easy to spot because they're in triangles. And that particular triangle is around a nail that a land surveyor has driven into the ground, and he's given you an existing level there and a height of that level. Okay, so that's a relative level. Here's what the land surveyor will give you, an example of something that they'll give you to confirm that information. You can see here at the back of the property, you can see that there's a difference between the fence that's on the site and where the... So here's the fence. You see that dashed line with the diagonal? That's showing the fence, and that's the legal title boundary. You can see in this case, the fence is 70 millimetres inside the property. On that side here, it's 110 millimetres inside the property. So the legal boundary doesn't match the actual conditions of the site. Okay? Now that's, for an architect, that's really critical, because you can't have a contractor going out and measuring the building from the fence. okay, because you've dimensioned it from the legal boundary. So to establish the relationship of the legal boundary to the actual boundary is really critical. Now, let me show you how it becomes so important. And we're talking about domestic construction. So I got the opportunity to do quite a large house renovation in Caulfield. And the client had recently purchased the property. They were very excited about doing this very large house renovation. It was a lovely existing house. And when I met them, I said, look, one of the first things we need to do is we need to re-establish the legal boundary. I need to know where the boundary is. And when we did the land survey, it was discovered that the fence at the back of the property, from the front to the back, was going on an angle. And at the front, it was about 100 mil into the neighbour's property. But towards the back, it was almost 600 millimetres into my client's property. And 600 millimetres is a lot. So if I'm going to do all the dimensions and the heights of a building are dictated by a thing called the offsets, the distance from the boundary, 600 millimetres is going to determine the height and also determine the distance from the boundary. Okay? So I said to the client, go and talk to the neighbour, just let them know you're going to re-establish the site boundary, and that's fine. Now, this is what she did. She went over there with a bottle of wine, introduced herself. Great to move in here. Really looking forward. I got this great architect. Going to do this great renovation for me. So pleased to meet you. Just letting you know that, we're going to start in a couple of months. We've got a survey and we're just going to put the fence back on the property line. At the front, it's a little bit on your side. The back, it's a little bit on my side, so we'll just put it back. And look, here's the, here's a survey, shows you that. And the neighbour said, oh, well, that's good. Thank you for confirming that we have rights to that area now, because we've had rights to that area for more than 15 years. And that is called adverse possession. Someone can claim use of that land if they've had use of it for more than 15 years through the adverse possession rights. So my client went, no, that's my land. I'm just putting the fence back to where it should be. And the neighbour says, no, you're not. You're going to build, if you're going to build a fence, you're going to build it exactly where it is now. And that's it. And the neighbour went and contacted the previous owner, who happened to be the mother of a very famous footballer and a very famous coach in, I think he's now in Queensland. And she had a copy of the receipt of the fence, which sure enough showed it was more than 15 years. Now that completely destroyed the relationship between the two neighbours forever. So what my client did is said, okay, let's design. She was furious. She was absolutely ropeable. So what she instructed me to do was to design a powder room with a big glass, floor-to-ceiling glass window, clear glass, with the toilet adjacent to that window, facing the neighbour's dining room. And whenever the neighbour had someone around for dinner, my client, Chris, suddenly needed to visit the toilet. And she would have great delight in going into the room, turning all the lights on, so this dirty, great big window, and she would go and sit on the toilet. And for as much time as the neighbours decided to get up from the dining table because they'd had enough. So it completely destroyed that relationship. Okay? So these sorts of things, they might sound minor, but they do cause serious problems. Another project I did in Clifton Hill, the neighbour had acquired 3 metres of land because of a driveway that they had been using. Now that meant that that 8-unit development went to 6 units because of that. Okay? And in order to get adverse possession back, you have to do it through the courts. So it's a very difficult thing to do. So this title versus actual is important. Where the adjacent structures are, you need to know that. Here's an existing building on the site. You need to know where the levels of the site are in order for you to design the building. Here's a power pole in the front here. Okay, now that might be useful to know. There's Telstra pits in the front. Might be useful to know. Okay, so you've got all this infrastructure along here. You've got, going back a bit, the phone box and SEC pole, so electricity power pole. Now that you've done the surface investigation, you need to find out what's below the ground. So what are the characteristics of the soil? What's the profile of the soil? How does the soil behave in relation to moisture? Does it expand? Does it contract? Because that's going to apply pressure. Where's the water table? The water table is where the ground is saturated to 100% with water. Now the water table is the reason why the Leaning Tower of Pisa leans, because there's a differential water table applicable below the ground, which is a very localised condition. Can the soil take the weight of your building? You can imagine if you've got a multi-storey building, you don't want it to sink in the ground. Who's been to Docklands? How many of you have been to the Docklands area? Put your hands up. How many have been to Docklands? Did you drive there? Did anyone drive there? Has anyone driven there? Where did you park?
I didn't park, I just dropped someone off.
Such a beautiful area of Melbourne, you just dropped them off.
Oh, actually, near the end of Bourke Street extends.
Next time you go to Docklands, have a look at where the car parks are. There are no underground car parks in Docklands. Why is that? Because the Docklands area was the alluvial plains of the Yarra River when it flooded. And the Docklands area is absolutely the worst soil that you can have to build on. It's very, very fine particles of soil, silt, completely surrounded with moisture, and it's got sulfuric acid in it as well. So it's almost the perfect storm of really bad soil down there. So it's far cheaper. In fact, it's almost impossible to excavate there. So you'll find all the car parks are above ground. So here's a direct way that the site is impacted on the design response. So this is, This is a type of report that you would engage a geotechnical engineer to provide, who would give you all that details about the soil properties. So now you need to get other consultants involved in participating as well. You need to find out if that site is contaminated. So here we have those petrol tanks of those service stations. Does anyone know what this is? What's this guy doing? Yeah. Steel performs really poorly in fire. So you need to protect it, and the way they used to protect it was spray it with asbestos. Okay? And that's a serious health issue. So generally when you refurbish buildings now, you have to remove that asbestos, which is a very, very expensive operation to do. Okay, so here's someone removing that asbestos fireproofing, which would have been discovered through this environmental audit. The flood level. So when there's a heavy rainfall, how high will the water come up? And some areas are prone to flooding and others aren't. Now, the Water Authority a few years ago changed all the flood levels for Melbourne. Okay, so when I did a house, a couple of units in Baldwin, which is an absolutely, it's classic suburban area where no way in the world you would think this would ever flood. But they determined that the flood level now was 1 metre above the existing ground level. And this is a map that plots the expectation of what the water catchment area would be as we proceed through global warming. And this is what they say if you had a really catastrophic high rainfall, that sort of 1 in 100 year flood, then you would find most of the southern suburban area of Melbourne would be underwater. So all of Elwood, St Kilda would be all underwater. And what they've done is they've changed all the flood levels. So now if you do a development there, you'll find a building that is down here, and then you'll find a new building that is up here, simply because the flood level, and you can't build within a floodplain. So here's an example of a residential house which is in an area of floodplain. So you're not allowed to build within a floodplain. So you can see they put all this up on stilts. So if it does flood, it's not going to impact on any habitable space. Everyone knows this building? What is it? It's Mies van der Rohe Farnsworth House. Do you know what's behind those trees? It's a river. Okay, now let's just see if Mies got his flood levels correct. So here's an architect who hasn't really accounted for the site conditions. Okay, hasn't necessarily gone and done a proper site analysis and investigation, because now his client's house is completely underwater, and I don't know if I would be very happy with my architect if this happened to my new house. Okay. Infrastructure details, that's where all the services are. Why do we need to know that? Because when you build a building, it generates load. And that load is generally distributed at 45-degree angle from the outer point of the footing system. So if I am generating load at 45 degrees, may I demonstrate on you? So here's a pipe. Here's a new building generating load. What happens to the pipe? Because it's taking my load. Okay? So you can't build on any area where your load transference is going to impact on a service or impact on another structure. So in this case, if there's a pipe there, you can see we've got to bring that 45-degree angle below the lowest level of that pipe, which means you can't do a standard footing system here. You've got to do a footing system which will bring that load and transfer it down. So in this case, the proposal here is to use a series of piles to transfer that load so that that 45-degree angle is further out. That 45-degree angle, its correct term is called the line of influence. This thing here, I just want to alert you to that, says it's the angle of repose. That's not what it is. Okay, it's wrong. So be wary of some of the documents that you look at. And if you go back to Dial Before You Dig, they'll provide you with information where all these pipes are. When you start to build, before you make one step on the site, to do any construction works, you need to do an investigation of surrounding structures. This is called a dilapidation survey. Now, why do you do that? Because invariably you will find that once construction work starts, somewhere, someone from the neighbours, and this will happen to you, it will absolutely happen to you if you stay in the industry. Somewhere, someone will come out and say, look what's happened to my house. That was in absolutely pristine, perfect condition. And the reason it now looks like that is because of your construction work. Now, if you had done an investigation before you stepped on site, you would have taken that photo and you would have said, you mean this building here, which looks exactly the same as what you're pretending that it is. So dilapidation survey is a record of existing conditions. It's really, 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 really important. Because if you have a neighbour who's got a crack like this, and you don't record it, then the neighbour will come back to you and say, that crack wasn't here before you started work, and my whole building is now falling down. Again, this happened to a project I was working on in Bay Street, South Melbourne. And a dilapidation survey should never, ever, 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 say ever.
Not do the survey.
No, say ever.
Ever.
Ever. Say ever. Ever. So an architect should never, ever, 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 ever do a dilapidation survey. Why? Because you're not an expert on construction. Okay? The person who should do it is the contractor. Because if you do it and you miss that, it's your fault. Yeah, and they're the experts, they're the builders, they're the ones who are in control of the site. It's legitimate that they should do that. An architect should never do it. If you go work in a practice and they say go and do a dilapidation survey, refuse to do it. And tell them they shouldn't be doing it either. So you'll see these cracks, someone will claim that you caused that problem and it becomes a real issue. So you need to, when you identify those problems, part of your site analysis says, well, I need to protect that building so it doesn't get worse. I need to make sure that I don't create problems, so I need to create some protection works. Now let me quickly flick through some sort of application of some of the things that we've been talking about. Here's a basement excavation. The neighbour has the garage and is built right on the boundary. So I would have identified that in my site analysis. And with my engineer, I would have designed a structural system that would support that building. Even though that's not part of my project, I've still got to account for maintaining that structure of the neighbour. So you can see with that line of influence, that load from their footing, you've taken away their support. So that line of influence is going into a void now. So you've got to transfer the load back into the ground, and that's your responsibility to do that. The council will hold money from the client or the builder to make good any damage. So if you don't record that this crossover, this thing that crosses over public land, was already damaged, the council will come back and charge you to redo that. Because a neighbour will say, well, it wasn't like that before they started building. But you can see building work hasn't started yet, and it's damaged, so you should be recording that. Otherwise, you'll end up paying for it. Here's, you know what that is now, don't you? That's a level marker. Here's another level marker, and they usually put them in power poles because they don't get damaged in power poles. Now, I want to very quickly talk about this fairly sort of prosaic building. Okay? So this was, in fact, this was an old, I think it was an old milk factory that was demolished, and these apartments were put up in its place. And the reason it came to the boundary is because the old building was almost exactly the same envelope. I'm talking about the building on the right. So let's say we're doing a site analysis here. Have a look at this image and think about something that is maybe worth thinking about if, let's say, that building wasn't there as a site analysis issue, that you need to take this into consideration when you're designing the building. See anything? Yeah, there's a right-of-way there. In fact, that right-of-way was very beneficial because it allowed this street frontage here not to have any car access to it. So because it was an apartment, you had to have 1 point something per bedroom. Okay, so for every bedroom you had to have a certain number of car spaces. Okay, and that was really useful because we didn't take any of the facade away, went down the laneway and did the garages from the side entry. Okay. Now, why is that important? Because we need to know the width of the driveway to generate a car turning circle. So the distance that your building has to come back to allow a car to come in, because we have a very narrow laneway, is something you need to account for. Otherwise you can't get the car in, and the client won't be very happy about that. Anything else? There's something there that was a serious problem. It was a serious problem. Yeah, there's electricity pole there. So what? Okay. Does anyone see that? Do you see that thing at the top? At the top of the building, you know what this is? What's that? What's it called? You should all know. It's called a capping. Okay, so it's on a horizontal surface, it's a capping. What's a capping made out of? It's usually some form of metal. Now, the Power Supply Authority are very particular about power lines. What's the most important position of power cables? Where do you think the most important position of a power cable is? It's not at this point. It's in the middle. It's right in the middle. Why? Because in high winds, the cable will move. And the point it'll move the most is in the middle between the two poles. Now, what can potentially happen is that that power line comes too close to metal, it'll arc. And it'll electrify the building. It'll arc onto the building. So there's very stringent requirements, as you have to be a certain distance away from power lines. And this building here, someone had forgotten to transfer the power pole that I showed you in the survey plan onto the architectural plan. And it went through the whole series of things because the guys who were doing the documentation hadn't gone out to site. They were relying on the land surveyor's plan, which someone, when they first created the digital drawing, had forgotten to transfer that power pole, which means that the client had to pay $40,000 to, you see how those things are offset? So now all the power cables are on this side. They previously were on both sides. Previously, these balconies were metal and steel. Okay, so the client had to pay, had to shut the power down for the entire street, had to pay for that, and pay for these power cables to be moved across. How happy were they with their architect? Not very happy at all. Has anyone, if you walk past a power pole, there's a language of construction as well. There's little signs out there that you're starting to learn, and you'll see these blue things on power poles. Does anyone know what they are? They're reflectors. Who would want to see something that reflects at night? A car, so they don't ram into the pole. Probably not a good spot to put it then, is it? Sort of a third of the way up the pole. Don't park the bikes there. Don't lock bikes. Yeah. And this blue, don't know, see that blue square? The white with the blue square in it? The one below the don't park the bikes? I'm talking about that one. And if you look, if you see one of these, if you look on the other side, there's a bigger one. On one side there's a little one, on the other side there's a big one. And that's really useful for an architect. It tells the fire brigade that if you're on this side, you're pointing in the wrong direction. Okay? You're facing the wrong direction. If you go on this side, you're facing in the right direction and look straight in the same direction that that larger square is. And if you stand under that, looking in that direction, you will see that. So it tells you where the fire hydrant is. Now, why that's really useful for an architect is because now you know that there's water supply of really good pressure that's available to the site. In a domestic job, it's not that important, but on a very large commercial project, it's very critical, because you might have to pay for that service to be brought up to your site. I'll finish up on this one. Where is the site? This was a site that a client came to me to build an extension for. Where's the site? Anyone see the site? This is the site here. So the proposal was to build on top of this. So this is the neighbour's site. This is the site for development. So they own this. They wanted to build on top here. What they wanted was a 5-bedroom house with 3 bathrooms. They wanted a large living room. They were a very large family, so they wanted a large kitchen. They wanted an outside area, a large outside dining area connected to the kitchen. And they wanted a swimming pool. And that was all to be constructed on top of this. Okay? Let's go and do a site analysis. That's the laneway. Neighbouring buildings hard up to the site. Existing exhaust system that had to be maintained throughout construction, had to be integrated into the design. All of these things, and we'll load this up to the LMS, see if you can pick what these issues are. These are things that I thought I need to think about from a site analysis perspective. Okay? Can the building take a loading? Can it take additional load, which means I need to get a geotechnical report? Where is the site boundary? Because if you look here, see this comes into the side of the neighbour's wall, but the neighbour's wall extends. So where is the property boundary? Where are the services? How do I get the existing water supply and storm water out back here? Because at the moment, present time, it actually runs over this area. What do I make it out of? I can't make it out of concrete because I can't get that up there. And I need something that will provide fire rating because I've got to build out to the edges. Can I do it in something that might be prefabricated, that can just be assembled? But how do I get it up to the site? So this was the proposal. This courtyard here was designed such it could be filled with water and they could use it as a swimming pool. So you see, site factors are a huge area of dispute, potential area of dispute. It's critical that you get as much information as you can. You've got to visit the site, and a good analysis will always get you out of problems and produce a really good design. Thank you for allowing me to talk to you today.
Right, so see you next week. Shells and grid shells, the art of structural engineering, and I hope you got enough information to fill in the first slides of your flipbook section with some good site analysis stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Say hello, we should say goodbye.
Farewell. Till next.